So with us, we've got Jeremiah and Maggie Eubank from Pure Pastures, Texas. Welcome to Ranching Reboot, guys.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Brian.
Well, thanks for doing this. I appreciate both of you being here. So let's start off. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourselves and where y'all are at?
So we are in Canyon Lake, Texas, which is about an hour north of San Antonio, right in the middle of the hill country. Arguably the most beautiful place in Texas, but also one of the harshest environments in Texas, I would say. We manage a 2,000-acre ranch in Canyon Lake we produce grass-fed beef, grass-fed and finished beef and lamb, and then pasture-raised pork and eggs. And we have two boys that eat everything. So that's why we got to raise everything. They're eating us out of house and home.
I can't imagine the guy sitting to your right has anything to do with that.
No, I mean, when people come to our store and they ask me, like, I have a family of 6, do I need 2 packages of bratwurst? It's like, I don't know. I have a family of 4 and I have to cook a pack for each of us because they eat like barbarians. So, I have no idea how much meat real people eat, or regular people, I guess.
Yeah. Well, how long will a half last me? I don't know. I kind of know how long it lasts me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, exactly.
So how long have you guys been there?
We've been here on this ranch for it'll be 3 years in October. Okay. And we've been doing kind of direct market stuff since 2015.
Why did your direct market stuff start, and how did it start?
So we actually started on a little place. It's just about 10 acres. And it's about an hour south of here. And we started with pigs, and we just kind of wanted to raise some for ourselves. And then, pigs are pigs, and, there's a reason we have a wild pig problem, because they make more of them fast. And so we wound up with a lot of babies and started selling them to friends and other folks, and kind of went the farmers market route, and started trying to make a business out of that, I guess, and grow it. And we were leasing some property across the road and a place a little further away, running a few cows, and then we got the opportunity to come up here and take over this management of this ranch, and did that in 2019.
Very cool.
We were both working oil field jobs when we very first started. And then it was kind of like, oh, you're raising pigs. We would like a pig. Can you raise one for us? And it's like, sure. And it's like, oh, well, now my friends want a pig. Can you do that? And it's like, yeah, sure. And then I got fired from the oil field. So it kind of, I would say that's really when like the retail side of it kicked off, because there was somebody that had time to do it. Like, we tried to make it into a real thing.
Okay. So let's turn back the clock. So Jeremiah, where are you from, and what was your education like up to the point where you met Maggie, I guess?
Hey, so
nothing before me matters.
She reminds me of that all the time. So
you can leave out the details that really don't matter.
I
get you in trouble.
Yeah. I grew up in Millsap, Texas. Basically spent my whole childhood there. Little small school, graduated like 50 in our class, I think. And then I went to school at Tarleton State in Stephenville. And that's where I met Maggie. That's it all.
Did you grow up in town?
It all started at, huh?
Did you grow up in town or out on land?
No, we were rural. I mean, we had a little place there, and Dad ran a few cows. It's like a little 30-40 acre place. Ran a few cows, just kind of, country kid. My granddad was a barber in Weatherford, Texas, just, kind of next door to us there. And he always ran a bunch of cows. And I've made the correlation that we're kind of doing a lot of the same things he did, because he had the barber shop, and then in in the front window of his barber shop, he had a sign there that said, you know, beef, halves and wholes for sale. And he had a farm where he raised some cows and fed out a few calves every year, and had a freezer there in the back of the barber shop where he sold all that beef. And so we're kind of trying to get back to that same idea.
Interesting business model. Come in,
Yeah.
get a haircut, get a shave, a couple pounds of burger for dinner that night.
Yeah.
I dig it.
He was way ahead of his time.
It worked pretty well for him, and those are all cash business, so it's that's not a bad thing.
Yes. So Maggie, how about you? How did you get to Tarleton State University?
Well, I am originally from a little tiny town called San Antonio, Texas. I don't know if you've
I've
heard of
heard of
it or
that
not.
one.
Yeah. I grew up on a sprawling 1/4-acre corner lot in the middle of town. I'm a city kid, but my high school was a magnet school for FFA, and I had always wanted to be a vet when I grew up. So I went into FFA. My mom's family is rural. They live out in kind of towards East Texas. They raised quarter horses and lived on land and stuff like that. So I got into FFA and got very involved and interested in agriculture, and then went to Tarleton from there. Figured out pretty quick that I'm not doctor material, but I did pursue a degree in agriculture. So it kind of led me to this. I didn't realize at the time that all of the FFA contests that I was doing were pretty much exactly what I would be doing as a job. I mean, I did sales and marketing contests and things like that in FFA. So it's pretty neat to see that come to fruition. My ag teachers are still stunned that of all the kids that go through the program, I'm the one that's still doing it.
Interesting. All right. I'd never really thought about that. And this is, I guess, part of my paradigm. 4-H around here was probably a little bit different, and it was the show cattle world that I'm kind of talking about, and that never had any appeal to me. I didn't understand that. We're going to take one out of the herd and really pamper them and really fluff them up and really make them look good, and that's going to represent what's out in the pasture. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
I don't think that's how that works. So maybe that was me, and I never really understood FFA, but those are great points that a lot of what you learn in there, you're still carrying over to running your direct consumer business. That's kind of the first time I've heard that, and hopefully it won't be the last.
Well, and I think it's different because I think it being an urban FFA chapter had a lot to do with it. We had a 40-acre farm behind my high school where everybody kept their animal projects. So we didn't have to keep them at our house. It's one of the biggest ag programs in the state. And now they have, when I was in high school, I cut meat at my high school for 3 years. So we had a butcher shop at the school, which there's only 3 in Texas that have that. There were at that time. I don't even know if there's still 3. We didn't harvest anything there. It was all harvested at the Excel plant that used to be in San Antonio. But
you could break down a primal.
Yes, yeah, we got whole carcasses in, and we broke them down, packaged them, and everything like that. But since everything was there, the focus wasn't, and we weren't all rural kids. The focus, we had show teams and we all showed animals and everything like that, but they had a large focus on there's career development events in FFA and leadership development events in FFA. And so we always had a big showing at contests for those kind of things, which is at the time, I was kind of just doing it to get out of school, because then I got to be gone all the time because I was competing. But it really is. I mean, it's exactly what I'm doing now.
Interesting. Very interesting. What about you, Jeremiah?
As far as that end, yeah, I showed a little bit in high school too, and FFA too. I showed pigs. we I was doing a bunch of other stuff. I played sports and everything, so we didn't get too wrapped up into the show cattle deal. And I don't think my dad was crazy about throwing a bunch of money at it, and pigs were about as far as he wanted to go. So, and I think that's probably a little bit the reason we actually got into pigs, is because we both had a little bit of experience with them originally, and it was an easy thing to do when we started out. That, we had enough experience and a small enough land base that it was like, well, that's kind of about the only thing we can efficiently run.
Well,
So-
and in Texas, you can get good beef. I mean, everybody does beef in Texas.
Right.
It's pretty easy to find good beef. No one, especially at that time, was doing pork. Pastured pork.
Are a lot more people doing pastured pork now?
It seems like I don't know if there's more people doing it now, or we just know more people that are doing it now. But it seems like there are more people getting into it.
I think you're starting to see, especially with the COVID stuff, and now you're gonna have to put that tag warning thing on there.
I don't do that. Spotify does that for me.
Yeah, well, sorry. But with that, I think we started seeing a lot more homesteader type interest in those animals and stuff, and kind of everybody, with a big enough backyard, thinking they might need to put something back there that they have control over. So
I wonder, I'm seeing the same thing too, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, right?
oh, I don't think it is either.
I'm just wondering how many wrecks we're going to have later down the line with things like that.
I see a fair amount of people. We're in a bunch of pig groups, Texas pig groups, and on Facebook, and there's always people that got pigs that can't have pigs now, or they don't want pigs now, or, a lot of people that I think had a jaded view of what it's like to produce your own food, and just kind of went in with both feet because everybody felt like they needed to. It was scary. But it's just like, buying a bunny at Easter. Once that bunny grows up, it's not as fun or cute. And so you either let it go or find somebody to buy it.
Yeah. All animals are cute when they're really little. The problem is they grow up to be big things. Like, everybody loves puppies, but not everybody loves to deal with the 14-year-old dog with hip problems.
Right. And pigs are hilarious until they're tearing up your whole yard. And, they're a lot of labor, for sure. A lot of management labor, and it can go south really quick.
So, okay, so we're talking about pigs and management and, things that can go wrong. Feral pig population, is there a large feral pig population near where you guys are? And how does that affect your pig management practices?
Yes, so there is a pretty good population here, and where we're at on the ranch, we've kind of got where we keep all the pigs is in a separate pasture from everything else. So like I said, it's a 2,000-acre ranch. The pigs are kept on about 60 acres of it that's fenced off separately, and it's all high fenced, and it's really tight fence. So we've got control over, pretty much good control over what comes in and out of here. So aside from a couple water gaps here and there that they might be able to get through, we're able to keep all the pigs, all the feral stuff out of here.
Is that more of a concern than your stuff leaving?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're able to manage all of ours with electric fence. We've got paddocks set up with just two hot wires that are set at 8 and 18 inches, I think. And it does a good job of keeping them all in. Pigs are very smart, and they know where that wire's at and what they can do and what they can't.
And ours know where their feed is and where it isn't. Like, if they get out, they're going to get back in because they know that somebody's going to come feed them.
That's always a good point. That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
Since we've been up here, we've only had maybe, I think, 3 wild pigs get in here. So they came in, but they didn't leave. Sort of deal.
Is it pretty easy to tell when you got one loose?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. They're they act totally different, and while a lot of our pigs are black, there's just definitely a different build to them too. The feral stuff down here just looks skinny and wild and about half wormy. So
We had some get loose up here, gosh, probably close to 20 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that.
yeah.
And when I came back in 2006, 7, 8, I think it was about 2008, the state decided, okay, yes, we have a pig problem in Kansas. And the way they dealt with it is they didn't allow hunting. They got a bunch of money funneled around through Kansas Department of Health and Environment through their kind of veterinary services.
Uh-huh.
They got with USDA Wildlife Services. They hired a helicopter, and these guys shot hogs out of a helicopter down here. There were several days where they shot well over 300, and every carcass had to be retrieved, tagged, and blood sampled, and then they hauled it off to a disposal pit. It took them 4 years, first couple of years of trapping, then 3 good hard years of flying, to get the population managed. And
Yeah.
they've pretty much got them hunted out of our area, and no more coming up into Oklahoma. Man, once they get established, it's awful hard to get rid of them.
Yeah. And I don't, that no hunting deal is kind of tricky there, because the hunting is part of the reason there's so many of them.
Right.
And it's become a pretty big business here. And even the helicopter hunt, I mean, it's nothing in Texas to go pay somebody to sit in a helicopter for an hour and go shoot pigs out of it.
I know it doesn't do a damn bit of good, but I kind of want to go do it because it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it does look like a lot of fun. Yeah, for sure. And it's a good cause, So, but yeah, there's hunting even pigs here is a big business, So, and I know there's plenty of those hogs, and probably not as much as there used to be, but I'm sure in the beginning that's what led to the proliferation of them, was them getting moved around to be hunted.
And even if they say it's an invasive animal, yeah, you can hunt them and we want to get rid of them. There's going to be breeders that are like, man, I'm making thousands and thousands of dollars a year, people paying me to come down and hunt these hogs. Why would I ever want them to go away?
Yeah, exactly. I've heard that from landowners before.
And I think that's why if you have a pig problem, you'll continue to have that pig problem until that policy is changed.
Right.
We don't need to talk about how I feel about government policies, but sometimes there's one that comes down that actually does what it's intended to do. And
those are pretty rare.
Extremely.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're probably in alignment on those ideas there.
So went from primarily a pig operation coming out of college to the diversified acreage that you're on now. So beef, pork, lamb, eggs. Let's talk about some of that.
Yeah, we when we were still at our other place, but we leased our neighbor's place across the street. He had some yard cows to keep his ag exemption, but he was an old man.
Tax cows.
Yeah, tax cows. So we bought his tax cows and then still managed them over there and brought them over, because we had 10 acres, but it was probably 9.5 acres of trees. So not great for cattle, which is another reason why pigs were good. And we had chickens and ducks at the time too. So we were doing pork and eggs over there. But so we had cattle across the street, and then we had pretty much topped out our production on the acreage that we had. So we had been looking around for a place to buy or lease, which we didn't have the right last name to lease anywhere around there. It was a very tight-knit family community. And even if somebody hated their uncle, if he had cows and needed a place to put them, they were going to let him lease it before they did you.
I've
Plus
heard that
the price
music
of land.
before.
Yeah, we were down near the Eagleford Shale, so the price of land was insane because it was a boom. So we found a place that was about 45 acres that was ridiculously priced low. So we pounced on it and then found out why it was priced low, because it had a tax lien on it. But that was okay because we were going to try to do it with an FSA loan. So it was going to take a long time anyway. So everybody agreed to it or whatever. And we asked them if we could lease it from them until the sale went through.
Okay.
So when we got that extra acreage, we decided to get into lamb and more into beef. We kind of the same thing with pork. We are lamb eaters. We love lamb. There's not a lot of good lamb available. And the majority of Americans have only had mutton from Australia. You know, they get it at Costco. It's gamey. And I don't hate that lamb. That was the lamb that we were eating, but that's the strongly flavored gamey lamb. And
It tastes like lanolin.
It does. It does. And when I tell people that, like most people don't even know that there's hair sheep and wool sheep, because why would they? They just know that there's lamb. They don't know what mutton is most of the time. You know,
Right.
They just think that it's.
Okay. Well, for those of us that don't know, what is the difference between?
Mutton is a sheep that is over a year old. It's an older animal. So we had a grand anniversary party out here at the store not too long ago, and someone asked me what the difference between a sheep and a lamb was, like how they were different. And I was like, well, they're not. A lamb is just less than a year old. So, but so we got into lamb mainly so that we could have lamb because we liked to eat it, but also because there was a market opportunity. There wasn't anyone in our area doing lamb. There weren't many.
And what I liked about the lamb deal too, running the numbers on it, it's a lot more viable to be an animal that you just take to the sale barn and can make money that way. And you don't have to direct market. Your margins are a little bit better versus cattle. So the numbers just work out a little better.
You have a place where you can take lambs, like feeder lambs, and sell them?
Oh yeah. There's quite a few sale barns around here that have pretty strong lamb markets. I mean,
the hill country is sheep and goat country. It's, the West Texas is big sheep and goat country, but the hill country is pretty big in it.
I mean, we're only 3 hours, I think 2.5, 3 hours from San Angelo, which is the biggest market in the country.
I've been through the hill country and been through San Antonio, and there aren't enough goats in the universe to make a difference.
No, there's not. That's for sure. So, but yeah, that's, Jeremiah was looking at it from that aspect. I was looking at it as, it's a pretty niche product at this point. And by then we had been doing the New Braunfels farmers market for a while, which has New Braunfels has a large German population and they are lamb eaters. Okay. And then by that time we had just gotten into the Pearl, which was, I would say, probably the biggest farmers market in San Antonio. Okay. And with a clientele that can afford a niche product. That's the nicest way I can think of saying that.
Okay. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah. So it was kind of a no-brainer for us to start it. Our processor said that they could handle it, and that they had processed sheep and lamb before. So we just went ahead with it.
Good deal. So let's talk about your cows. What kind of cows y'all got?
We have a mix of, we've got some Corianis. I don't know that we're as fond of them as you are. And
That's
we've got
okay.
some Red Angus. And we're transitioning more toward the Red Angus stuff. And we've run some South Pole bulls on them. And I just turned out a couple more Red Angus bulls today too.
Okay.
And just commercial stuff, no registered or any of that.
So you're coming over the top of your Corrientes with Red Angus bulls?
They had been South Pole over the top.
Okay.
And and now it'll be Red Angus.
How do you feel about those South Pole Corriente calves?
I feel better about them than I do the full Coriani cows.
Well, that one's pretty fair.
We've got our first set of calves out of Coriani South Pole heifers on the ground now. And there's not a whole bunch of them. It's just a handful. They're pretty good. I think they're going to make pretty good mamas. I've not been impressed with the steer. Like they haven't added a whole lot of beefiness to the steers. They're still kind of framey and, just thin compared to, a straight Angus or something like that.
I understand what you're saying. And I think that if you're going to look at like 5 heifer calves that are of similar mamas and the same dad, you'll see probably 2 that you like and 3 that you don't. And it might not make sense what, the cow they came out of. And I think that's just some of the genetics that we're dealing with in the Corianes.
Yeah. And it's so, it's so varied in there. And the ones we had were decent mamas and stuff. The thing we get into, and I've made this comment to a bunch of people that I've talked to, where they talk about, and this goes not for just Corianes but any of these smaller frame cattle, and all the people that espouse, you've got to get these super small cattle and all this stuff, and you can run so many more of them. That makes sense for a cow-calf guy that's going to go sell 400-pound calves.
Yep.
That doesn't make sense to somebody selling ribeyes, especially in Texas, because nobody in Texas wants to buy a ribeye that's this big around. We want big 2-pound ribeyes,
Everything's got to be bigger in Texas.
Exactly. So that's where I think that having those moderate sized cattle are really important. The 700-pound cow ain't gonna cut it. So,
and I always explain it to people when people in the store, when they ask us what kind of cattle we run, I tell them that we have a ground beef herd and we have a steak herd. And the ground beef herd is like, when it comes to making lemonade out of lemons, when grazing is concerned, you can't beat a Coriani. I'm pretty sure we could go out there and set them all on fire. They'd probably put themselves out and be better after they did it. But they just don't finish the way that people down here want their beef. And grass-fed and grass-finished beef is an uphill market, even though it's kind of having good PR right now. People think that they want it, then they have a steak that's lean, and then all they do is talk shit about grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and it's bad for everybody. So we're kind of with the red Angus. They don't, you can tell, you can go out in our pasture right now when it's over 100 degrees, the red Angus are all huddled up under a tree, and the Corianis are out there tap dancing on rocks and eating thistles. But
yeah, pretty much.
But they're not turning those thistles into ribeyes. So it's kind of like we have to have one foot in each to make the business work, kind of thing.
So you're talking about putting South Pole over your Corianes, which I like that, and I've thought that was a good idea for a while. So this is kind of like the first time I've talked about it. I just got my friend Richard, Hat Creek Cattle Company. There's your shout out. He brought me a special little bull. By the time this comes out, it'll be a couple weeks ago, so he'll have been at work for at least 3 weeks. So the bull he brought me is a Mashona South Pole cross bull. His Mashona mother came out of Jaime Elizondo's. No, that's wrong. The oldest Mashona herd that's down in Florida that a lot of people associate with Jaime Elizondo.
Yeah.
His mama came out of there, and his South Pole dad is now working for Greg Judy at Polyface Farms.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, we turned him out, and hopefully he'll go to work on my 2-year-olds, the 2 and the 1-year-olds. Hopefully, I've got a lot of 2-year-olds that are straight up Coriane. or
Yeah.
sale barn cross. And probably most of my 1-year-olds are going to be kind of the same. The calf crop I've got on the ground now is the first one that I've bred all of it. And some of the calves that I got on the ground from this year look better than the 1-year-olds from last year. I hate to say that. And I've got some ones that were born last year that are dang near the same size as some of my 2-year-old, like full Corriente cows.
Yeah, and I've seen some of that too with these Corrientes. Is last year's crop definitely looked better than the crop from the year before. Size wise and stuff, they grew out a lot better, and I mean, I just attribute it to better forage, I guess. And but it's exact same breeding, same cows and same bull on those. So, but it is a stark contrast between the two. I mean, really, it's not a contrast because they're if you look at them, you can't tell which one's which.
Right.
So they're nearly the same size. I guess the contrast is in how they've grown.
And I've been really watching the last, 60 days of, when we're on our best grass of how the cows are responding, mine versus all the customer cows on the ranch. And I mean, just straight up, they're not putting on the raw pounds that the other animals are. But then again, are they putting on their percentage based on weight? Probably. Are some of them carrying a lot less fat than the Continentals? Definitely. And those kind of get, marked over the ground beef herd, and what you guys have put the ground beef herd. Right. I have a little bit different of a name I'm not going to say on the air yet. So, and I'm not even going to say that I have a steak herd, but I have a herd. I have a pool in there that I'm looking that I'm watching that has that potential to grow into that. Yeah. And is that a market to chase? Well, we can all agree we need to have a little bit more carcass size, but it needs to be a reasonable size. 1,600 pounds is way too much. 1,000, 1,200, that's a good spot to be.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Kind of everything we shoot for is to kill animals around that, that 1,050 to 1,200 mark. And the ones we're running, they're built well enough that we'll get good fat coverage and good intermuscular fat at that size. So without and not have a lot of trim and leftover, and I think that is that real happy medium where, especially for someone in our situation where we're the ones selling it, we're getting full utilization out of all of it and getting the most dollar value out of it that we can.
And there's still a lot of customer education. I talk about having that steak herd so that we can have bigger steaks, but people still ask about why are they still so small, especially with like briskets, because Texans eat a lot of brisket. You can get a fully trimmed brisket from the store that's $12. Well, our brisket, as it comes straight off 12 pounds, sorry. Our briskets straight off the animal as they come, not trimmed at all, might be 12 pounds. They're tiny compared to what you get at the store. And so a lot of people have questions about that. And we just tell them, those big animals aren't what we're going for. They don't work in our system. And I think that it's important for people to see that that's not what all animals look like. That's an unrealistic steak.
Unrealistic steak. I was sitting here thinking about, what did steaks look like in the 60s? What did they look like in the 70s?
Yeah.
Before we really started, mass industrialization of the feed yards and building these big, massive feed yards. I mean, I get farmer feeders have been happening forever, but back in the mid 50s, what did a steak look like? Not even talking about the pipeline to get it there, or whether it was grass fed, grain fed. Like, how big would a ribeye have been 50, 60 years ago? And you said something about customer perception. I've thought about that a lot, over the last couple of months. We have customer perceptions about farming and ranching in general. We've got customer perceptions about grass-fed versus grain-fed. That that in every lie there's always a negative truth, but then there's that truth can always be misinterpreted or misdirected. I guess what I'm saying is, the public perceptions of how we eat and what we eat, I think to a lot of extent are flawed, and what we expect out of our food is has been flawed for a while.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I would say 85% of my job is customer education and dealing with customer perceptions, preconceived notions about what food should look like or what it looks like or what's normal, things like that. Our pork, if we sometimes we'll process a sow when they're, done being a sow. I could pull a rib chop off of one of those sows and put it next to a ribeye, and you would not be able to tell the difference because they're the same size, they're the same color, that dark meat. And I've had people ask me before what's wrong with our pork because it's not light pink.
That's not
Because
white
that's what
meat.
they're that's yeah, that's it's not the other white meat. And to no fault, I mean, I don't want to say to no fault of their own, because they could be out there doing their due diligence and researching things, but it's what they see at the grocery store. Like steak is red, pork is light pink. So they have no idea. I tell them this is probably the pork that your grandfather ate or your great grandfather ate, and they have no concept of that.
They think their steak should be bright red with pure white flecks of fat in it.
Mm-hmm.
They think their pork should be light pink, almost white. They think their chicken should be whiter than bleached paper.
And a 7-pound whole bird.
Yeah. And a 7-pound bird. And, they want their bacon for $1.50 a pound. And, they want to go through McDonald's and eat off the 99-cent menu.
Yeah. Most of our customers, they came to us for a reason. They're at least somewhat informed. But because we're so close, we're right in between two of the largest cities in Texas. So we have a lot of people just stop in because they're close. And so there is still quite a bit of customer education.
So how do you really feel about farmers markets?
Well,
since you asked, I actually get this question a lot. We have a lot of friends that we have met because they're getting into farming, and so they've called and talked to me. Everyone's trying to put together a farmers market, which is something that I don't think is great. I mean, the market is saturated, I feel.
Okay.
But
why do you say the market is saturated?
Because the types of vendors that should be at a farmer's market, there's not enough of them to do a farmer's market every 10 miles.
There's not enough farmers.
There's not enough farmers. And if you put 10 farmers markets in a town like New Braunfels, they're all just going to cannibalize each other. That's spreading customers to 10 markets when you could consolidate and have one really good badass market where everyone goes.
But I don't like that person that puts on that one 3 blocks away on Tuesdays. I want to have mine on Thursday mornings because I don't like them.
But it's from my experience, it's more fun to talk shit to them to their face at a booth next to you than it is to talk shit behind their back. That's what all the farmers do at farmers markets. They just bitch within each other. I mean, but and that's there used to be, there's the farmers market in New Braunfels is on Saturday. There was one that started on Wednesday night that was kind of a situation where the Saturday one was run by someone and someone else wanted to start another one, so they started the Wednesday one. And I think that you can do that, but when you get into places like Austin and Houston that have tens of Saturday markets from 9 to 1 every Saturday,
right,
you're just kind of diluting everyone's pool.
And you wind up with a lot of stuff that's more artisan and less farmers.
Yeah.
It winds up being crafty type stuff and all these other people that aren't farmers, or it's prepared food, and it's just, you wind up with just a bunch of tourists out there, honestly.
It's
And that
jams and jellies and
Yeah.
candles and
drives the farmers market customers away. I've been a part of farmers markets where they continuously get complaints about there not being enough farmers. Like there's too many other things out here. But when it comes to farmers markets, what I will say is we don't do farmers markets anymore. That it's not part of our business anymore, but I don't know that we would be to this point without a farmers market. They are a grind. They are hard on product, especially if you're selling frozen meat out of coolers. But they are great exposure. And depending on the one you go to, they are really cheap, great exposure. It's a way to get in front of customers.
And that was kind of where I was really wanting to end up, or where I was hoping we would go, is why don't you do farmers markets? What was your experience with them? And you just kind of summed it up. That
Yeah,
we've heard it before on this show, right, guys? Like, it's good. Farmers market is a grind. It's hell. They suck, but it's a necessary part to get your name out. And I think there's probably a fair amount of folks listening out there that are still doing the farmers market grind, that are like, yes, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I can
Right.
build my customers to the point where I don't need this anymore.
I tell everyone that asks me, farmers markets are an incredible incubator. Like you should absolutely, I don't ever discourage anyone from getting into a farmers market. I think it's where you learn about your product. It's where you learn about your customer. It is the easiest way to educate your customers because they're there talking to you. I mean, it's not a phone conversation. It's not an email conversation. You're face to face. They can ask you questions. It's a conversation. And people like that. People always liked the time that we took with them at the farmers market. For our business, it's just not sustainable. We have our retail store at the ranch. We do deliveries, and we were doing wholesale and farmers markets. And we just, even if it wasn't a drag on time and it wasn't hard on the product, we didn't have enough inventory to do all of those well. It was like we were quarter-assing 4 things and we needed to be whole-assing 2 things.
I know exactly how that feels.
So, and that's, we didn't burn any bridges when we left the farmers market in San Antonio. They're great people. Like, honestly, when I was at the farmers market, I loved it. Like the 4 hours of the market, being with the other vendors, being with the customers, like it was great. That 4 hours was a 12-hour day for
Right.
me. And when it's 103 degrees outside for all 4 hours of that market, that's pretty tough. But I left that market on good terms. I've still talked to the people that run it. But it's just not, I know that there are people that successfully do most of their business at farmers markets. I don't ever see how we could have done that. Like we needed to pivot to something else. So we opened the store.
And I keep hearing that a lot from meat producers about farmers markets, that it's great advertising, great exposure, but the workload to get there is a lot, and a lot of them wish they could quit doing it.
Well, and for us, I made it even, we talk a lot about whether we should continue to produce all of the proteins, but like all the other vendors, when they came, they would have like 2 coolers of meat because they just did beef, or they just did pork, or they just did lamb. I was hauling 750 quart coolers in and out of that farmer's market because I wanted to be fully stocked on all the protein. And that was if we didn't have eggs, like it wasn't egg season. If it was egg season, I was hauling in 270 quart coolers of eggs.
Jesus.
So it's,
And then you still, the other part of that, with all of that handling and the in and out and all that stuff, you're just touching that product so many times, and you wind up with busted seals and stuff that you've got to sell at a discount, or, you know,
Stuff that gets too warm.
exactly.
Well, and I couldn't, like, I'm not going to take whole briskets to the farmer's market because they take up a lot of cooler room. You kind of have to like Tetris all of your meat into these coolers.
Right.
So there's days when I could have sold 10 whole briskets at the farmer's market, but I don't bring them because if I do bring them, they're taking up room from ground beef that I could sell.
If you brought 10, you would have sold 2.
Yeah. And then those people that want them aren't going to show up. So I would like pre-sell briskets. If you wanted a brisket, you could prepay for it, and then I would bring it. You could pick it up at the market. But and in some ways limiting what you can bring to a farmer's market, like your choices, is good. You know, people can get very overwhelmed if they're looking at 400 choices of meat at a farmer's market. But yeah, it was just logistically, it had really become a problem.
And the other bad thing about it is too, you have, it's so hit or miss. I mean, you'll have a weekend where you just absolutely kill it and come home with barely anything left, but a wad full of money. And the following weekend, it'll be exact opposite. You'll sell $100, $200, and you didn't even pay for the gas to get up there. You know, so it especially around here with these markets, they were very dependent on what else was going on in town or what the weather was doing. If it was miserably hot and there was some event going on, it was just, you'd get nothing. And so you just wasted all that time and money and that was a lot of our rationale switching over to this store here at the back of the ranch and just basically opening it up. And we said, well, if we don't sell much, at least we didn't waste the time going to the market. And, we're here at the ranch, we can do other things in and around the shop and at least be efficient of our time and not just sit there twiddling our thumbs.
Right.
Well, and until 9 months ago, it was just Jeremiah and I here. Like, we didn't have any employees. We didn't have any help. It was just the two of us. So we were limited in the amount of markets we could do. Like, some of these big vegetable producers and meat producers, they have teams of people. They can do 6 markets in a day. Right. That might be sustainable. That's a good model. We were limited to just 2 markets if we both went, so that really limited us, because then we were just banking our whole week's money, like income, on that one day, which is not sustainable. Like, and if it was a bad week, then that bad week bled over it into like the next week, and then it just kind of,
and then it snowballs. And yeah,
right. So we quit one farmer's market to open the store, and then this year 2022 was the year we didn't go back to the other one for 2022. We just decided to try to make a go of it. Now, I will say that decision was made a lot easier because COVID really changed the way people buy their food. Like, we really didn't have a delivery business pre-COVID.
Okay.
And then that hit, and delivery was our main business.
People weren't
nobody left their house.
Yeah.
It changed the way people buy things across the board, but it changed, we got customers because we offered delivery, and we got customers because we had product. We weren't limiting ground beef. We weren't limiting anything else. And so I don't know that we would still be at farmer's market if it hadn't been for that, but it's a big reason.
He's shaking his head no.
Yeah. Well, he wouldn't. That's why he's shaking his head. He would have been here. I don't know if I would have been at farmer's market still, but it gave us a good head start to make this decision, because we still have, a lot of our delivery customers now, people are used to having their groceries delivered to them. So we have a lot of holdover customers from COVID.
Okay. So tell me about your store. Like, is it a Karma store? Is it manned, unmanned?
No, yeah, we definitely, man. We basically took the same hours that we were working at the farmer's market for the longest time. We were just open Saturday and Sunday from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And there'd be one of us up there. We'd both be in and out or whatever. And basically it is a metal shop that's on the, barn, workshop, whatever, that's here on the property. And it was already partially finished out. And so we just went in there and set in. Initially, it was 3 or 4 chest freezers that we put in there, and basically opened the big roll-up door and said, and the gate, and said, here we are, come on out.
Like any good meat purveyor, we had several Facebook and Craigslist freezers that we had been storing meat in
Right.
before we could get a walk-in. So we basically just cleaned all those up and set them around and put signs on them and put meat in them. But now we have merchandise freezers and a fridge, the glass front ones. We still have some chest. I mean, it's still kind of janky, we're doing it one piece at a time, but
Nobody starts at the top. That's okay.
nobody does. But now we also carry other people's products. So like we have some friends that have a farm about 45 minutes from here that do pastured poultry, which is a thing that we are not into doing. So we buy their chicken and sell it at the store. All of the foods that we got really used to eating because we were doing farmers markets that we don't get anymore because we're not doing farmers markets. We started carrying that stuff so that we could still eat it, but also because people that come out to the store like that kind of thing. It's higher quality foods made by local producers that they can't really get out here. They would have to go to a farmer's market to get it. So we started carrying several products like that, just things that are produced locally, people that we know, that aren't anything that we would produce ourselves.
Okay. Is that kind of correcting some of the issues you saw at farmers markets where there is too much saturation of product?
Not really. I mean, we're we're limited by space and what we could get, So, I mean, if it came down to like we didn't have enough lamb or something like that, or lamb and pork would be harder for us to source because not as many people do it. But like if it came down to something, if we ran out of ground beef and we had a friend that had like a bunch of ground beef, we could source ground beef from them. We just don't have enough room or really enough traffic to be stocking multiple producers of things that we produce, kind of thing.
I guess that was kind of what I was leading into is, are your customers happy with what you have, or are they asking you for different offerings? Like not necessarily just different proteins, but are they asking for like say vegetables or baked goods or things like that?
They do. We get asked for vegetables quite a bit. And I'm trying to figure out, yesterday, we're part of a co-op that does like a monthly meat share and a monthly vegetable share, and they take off July through October. So the vegetable producers don't have anywhere. A lot of them don't do farmers markets because of the reasons that we spoke of earlier.
And they probably move their product through the boxes.
Through the co-op, right? So I was talking to some of them about if they wanted to bring us what they have, that we would sell it in the store, because we don't have a vegetable operation. It's something that we've talked about, but again, there's only us. So, but
and I feel that acutely. Like, so how common are vegetable farms, truck farms, small scale family farm? I hate to say family farms because family farms is like everything. Everybody's Cargill's
right.
A family farm, right? My left foot. But farms that aren't on a massive industrial scale that are primarily still tended, with a lot of human labor to grow.
Right.
A wide variety of edible crops. I'm not talking like, a 500 acre soybean farm or a 500 acre watermelon patch, right?
Right. I mean, they're in this area, they're pretty common, and it seems like more and more are trying to start up like that homesteader mentality that we were talking about earlier. The problem is or the problem that I've noticed, which is not just for here, it's everywhere, is that, you know, we all know that farming and ranching, especially on a small scale, is very romanticized, and people get into it because they feel called to it, because they like the lifestyle of it, but they don't understand the margins of it. They don't treat it like a business, you know? And a lot of times they get real good up and going, and then they have to shut down because they can't pay, they figured out they can't pay their bills, or they don't want to have to work an off-farm job and do this and everything like that. So there's a lot of starting up here and then not making it, which, you know,
It sucks to watch.
it does suck to watch. And I have a lot of feelings about how, like, better ways that it could work for those kind of people, you know, like reasons why they can't get into it and can't be successful. But we actually, for the part of Texas that we're in, there are a fair amount of like well-established small producers in this area, vegetable and meat.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Jeremiah, you've been sitting over there. We haven't heard a whole lot from you.
I talk a lot.
Leaving it to the expert here.
So what do you do? What's a week in the life of Jeremiah look like?
Basically, I mean, there's obviously a pretty clear delineation here that Maggie does most of the sales and marketing stuff, and then mine's mostly the production stuff. So it's just managing the cattle, the sheep, and the pigs, moving stuff around. We have everything on the ranch here. We've put in, I think, 19 miles worth of electric fence. So we've got about 40 different pastures that range in size anywhere from 5 acres to 120 acres. The average being probably around 40. So we move those around through those, move cattle and sheep through those pastures. The watering system, there's about 9 miles of water line through this place. And so we'll move everything around. Rotations can vary anywhere from multiple moves a day down to, maybe a week at a time in some of those larger pastures that we really have trouble subdividing. So
large pastures with trouble subdividing. I know how that feels too.
Yeah. So a lot of those bigger pastures that are on the 100 to 120 acre range, they're just, we set up a lot of these based on, mostly on geography. The land here, they call it the hill country for a reason, right? And so a lot of these pastures are really hilly, and this place has been overgrazed and eroded, and so there's real thin soils. So trying to put a step-in post into a 1/2 inch of soil and solid rock is,
that doesn't work.
Difficult. Yeah, it's tough.
You'd need better posts than what I've got.
Right. So in those cases, we utilize those more permanent pastures, and don't just leave them in there a little longer and don't worry about trying to subdivide it.
I face some of the same challenges with terrain. I mean, it's I'm in a paddock that's 167 acres, and I've already sawed it in half, and there's just not another practical way to get across that canyon. So it's
right.
One ridge to the next, and it's broken in half where we can get across in the one spot.
Right.
And then
I'm
just a
sure
mile
for you-
south of there, I've got 550 acres that I can set up on strip grazing that I can get across with poly reels.
Right. Yeah,
Oh.
and that's the way a lot of ours is. I mean, we've got just a few clean pastures that used to be fields at one time, where we can kind of strip graze. Most of it is these bigger kind of brushier areas that are, up and down and creek bottom and ridge top and that sort of deal.
You talked earlier about, that you had some ground that was had a really strong canopy cover of trees on it, and it's really
Mhm.
brushy and undergrowth. You talked about pigs doing the clearing. Have the pigs done a lot of the work in clearing out that underbrush so you can graze, so you can graze some ruminants through there? Like, did the pigs go in and clear things up, and then you can bring in the goats to make it a little more open? Then you bring in the sheeps, and then you can bring in the cows. Is that kind of how that works?
They've done some of it. A lot of what we've done is going mechanically clear and then run the pigs in there. And that's done well, and basically using the pigs to add fertility back to the soil and to kind of till up what, how it is when you go in with the machine and clear brush. And we're using most of what we've done there in these areas has been skid steer work. So we'll go in with a skid steer and a grapple bucket and just knock these cedars over, pull the stumps up. And so it leaves it pretty rough.
Right.
And the pigs can go in there and kind of sort of till that stuff up. And then we're feeding them in there. And so they're, putting their manure down and tilling all this in. And they do a pretty good job adding some fertility back to the soil. So we've done that, and it's worked pretty well to bring some grass back. And then we've also just ran them in places where we haven't cleared anything and it's too thick to do anything else, and just let them go underneath it. Now, I don't know that they've necessarily opened it up enough. They've definitely opened it up, at that big height.
Right. Top of the
And
shin.
it'll be interesting.
Top of the shin.
Yeah, basically. It'll be interesting to see how much grass we get coming back in there once it finally starts raining again. But those areas, I think they'll probably be just relegated to pig areas.
Okay.
And it'll be a place we can rotate them in and out of and come back to. And it just may never grow that much grass anyways.
So what's your grass like?
The majority of this ranch is covered by old world blue stem, whether it's KR or Clayburg or yellow or Australian or whatever, all these different old world blue stem and hybrids are. And it's a lot of that. And then we've got some few pieces that have some big blue stem, and there's a fair amount of little blue stem as well.
Well, I guess the old world blue stem, it does make a lot of volume. It doesn't need a whole lot of rain.
The thing about ours is it grows very flat. So it doesn't make a lot of volume for us.
Really?
Because it doesn't, y'all's may be different, but it's not real upright. It once it gets drought stressed or grazed very hard, it kind of flattens out and it almost looks like a thin bladed crabgrass. Okay. And then it puts up a seed head like immediately.
The stuff that I've got, we customer cows are eating it. And Tim, I know you're listening. Your cows eat the crap out of old world blue stem. And it's probably because he's got a couple pastures full of it down at his place where these cows came from. So this is the first group of cows I've had on the ranch that really go out and seek it out. Like, we moved them yesterday morning, and that's where they went. They went for the couple big old world blue stem patches, and they're mowing them down. I mean, they're eating 40 to 50% right off the top, taking the seed heads and stems with them. And it's pretty impressive the way they're using it, and they're eating it before they're going after any of my good C4 warm season grasses, like the big blue and the Indian grass. They're walking past, the little blue stem to go eat old world. Okay, fine, go eat it. Like, stay in there even longer. Like, maybe let's try to graze some more of it down to dirt. But I've got another probably 20 days of pretty similar pastures ahead of them, and I'm using them a little hard. Like, I'm going a little bit hard on the usage because they're really eating that old world blue stem, and they're going back on that 4th and 5th day and taking second bites of it. Yeah. If they're doing that on my India grass, they'd be in the next pasture. But doing on that
Right.
Go ahead, go back and eat that Johnson grass. Go eat that old world blue stem some more. We'll
Yeah.
stay in here a few more days if that's what y'all are eating.
For sure. Yeah, and that's what we've done is tried to encourage them to eat that stuff, and leave the Indian grass, leave the big blue stem where we've got it, which we don't have much big blue. There's a lot more Indian than anything else, out of those kind of more preferable native forages. But yeah, we definitely try to preserve those, and we've done some seeding. We've done where we've cleared some of that brush with an excavator. We've gone in and reseeded over the top of it, and had some pretty decent results, even in the rocky country there, trying to get Indian grasses and switchgrass and big blue stem and even eastern gamma grass to come back in there.
Well, when I figure out the secret to eastern gamma grass, I'll let you know, because I don't have any of it.
Yeah, we've got a few places that have come back up here. We found just a few bunches initially in that first year we were here, and we've started seeing some more come back more recently. We're doing some talks with some folks, or university folks around here, and hopefully we're going to start doing some trials on replanting some of it and doing some little tests and see what'll help the germination, and maybe even doing some plugs and trying to get some like plots of it established. So
Okay.
We'll see how that works out. I don't know.
I know from what I've seen on this ranch, we had some old farm ground that got replanted, and it didn't do much. About 15 years later, he went back and he planted some forbs back in it, in addition to the native seeds that he'd put in there. And then with a matter of years, things start popping up, and it took a hard graze and a dry year with a very timely rain after I went through those areas. Next year we went down there, first time we'd seen, the tall prairie grasses, anything better than little blue stem.
Yeah.
And, all of a sudden we started seeing, seeing all the sweet clover and the scurf pea and the big grasses come up. Like, well, what caused that? We had to have the forbs in there. You can't, I don't think just seeding the grass seed worked. You needed to have those native weeds in there for the complex interaction between plants. And putting those in there and then applying a high energy graze event and then getting a good timely rain gave everything moisture. And I think it gave a lot of other seeds an opportunity to germinate that hadn't had it before.
Yeah. I think a lot of times we don't give enough credit to those weeds for changing the soil composition, and we don't do a good job of recognizing what they're actually doing and why they're there.
The weeds are all telling us something.
Exactly.
If a weed is growing in soil, there's a reason that weed is growing there. The soil needs something. Does it need shade? Is it deficient in a mineral? Is there a plant next door that needs a mineral that weed is growing so it can provide really soon? Why are the weeds there? They're all there. And I kind of object to the term weed because, as an undesirable plant.
Right.
Because there's really only two kinds of plants in the pasture: stuff cows will eat and stuff cows won't eat.
Yeah.
And, somebody will say, well, if you make them hungry enough, they can eat anything. Well, that's true. But when I moved them in here yesterday, they went down there and ate a willow tree. Explain that. Why would they go eat a willow tree first?
And eat it first. Yeah.
Yeah. So to some extent, a lot of things in the pasture are cow feed, especially the things that people consider are waste or junk or would spray 2,4-D to get rid of because they need more grass for their cows. Well, if you kill all those yellow clovers, like that's what my cattle are eating first thing in the morning. They're going out, they're eating the yellow clovers, they're eating the legumes to get their rumen alive, to get the protein going.
Right.
Like, why would we want to take that away from the cows? Just so we could put it in our trip hopper and haul it out later?
Yeah. And so you can have your pasture be exactly whatever your idea of correct is. So it looks good for your neighbor. So it's all the same. Yeah. And that's one good thing about sheep too, is that they're going to utilize that stuff that cows don't eat. So by having both of them, we're getting better utilization, out of the land in general. Even the places which, is a big part of this ranch where we do have pretty poor grass. And there are a lot more, quote unquote, weeds.
So we talked a little bit about using pigs to go in and kind of clean up an area. And I guess what I want to know now is, like, as you're moving through your 40 pastures, your 40 paddocks. So what's going in, like, what's the first one to move to a fresh pasture? Like, is it the cows and then the sheep come after that? How does that work?
It just kind of depends. So like I said earlier, those pigs they're not necessarily commingled with those cows and sheep. We keep them in this 160-acre pasture, and then we're doing that on smaller areas.
Because there is wild hog pressure on the other part
rest
of the
of
ranch.
Right. I remember that now. You said you had that just that part high fenced.
Yeah.
So the rest of it we'll move, we'll just move the cows and sheep through. The order can vary. Sometimes the cows are first, sometimes the sheep are first. There might be as much as or as little as 1 day of rest in between to as much as 2 or 3 weeks, kind of depending on how it's all worked out and where they are in relation to each other, and what we're doing, if we need to work one and not work the other or whatever. And then there's times like right now where we have them combined. We're pretty heavy in drought right now. We've had such little rain compared to what we should have had. We've got everything condensed into one herd, basically trying to give all the other pastures as much rest as we can give them.
I definitely feel the whole drought situation. I definitely feel that.
Yeah.
So I guess I was going to ask, and you kind of answered a little bit about, do the sheep follow the cows or the cows follow the sheep, and why would you make a choice to do one or the other?
I think probably typically it's the sheep following the cows, and that's because the sheep will eat more of the cattle feed than the cows will eat of the sheep feed initially. Okay. Right? So and I kind of work a little harder on the animal performance out of the cattle than I do the sheep. The sheep seem to be able to get by on less quality, right? So it's just like if you were rotating finishers in front of dry cows, kind of that same mentality to me. So we're trying to
put what you need to have on a high plane of nutrition in front.
Right, exactly. And to me, either the cows they either need more access to that grass, or the sheep are just better at finding it behind them. One of the two. I don't know what the case is.
That makes sense.
So that's typically how it goes. I hear a lot of people talk about keeping them together all the time, and how you can always just run them together, and that hadn't necessarily worked well in our experience. Like I said, I'm doing it right now, but it's kind of out of necessity. We've run into.
What don't you like about it?
Huh?
What don't you like about it?
We've run into some issues like during the winter when we're feeding hay, and we'll go put out a bale and roll it out. And if we're rolling it out in the pasture the cows and sheep are in at that time, they're going to come mob it. I've had, ewes get stepped on, lambs with broken legs, and, because the cows are just running over them to get to the feed. And even if they got a bale still sitting out there and you're setting another one down, they just,
it's a cattle behavior problem caused by management.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so that's been, and then there's also the deal of trying to work them. You know, you've got to get them in there and separate them out. You know, if you need to work cows and or work sheep or whatever. And the way, especially the way we run the sheep, it's kind of everything all in there, whether it's, you know, dry ewes or ewes with lambs or lambs that we're growing out to butcher. So you kind of have to sort through everything if you need to take some animals to the butcher. So, and we don't have a lot of freezer storage, so we tend to make more trips more often to the butcher. So it's not like we're going twice a year, you know, with a full trailer load
Right.
of lambs. You know, it's a couple of trips a month where we're taking, you know, one trip we're taking 10 hogs and 10 lambs, and then the next trip we're taking, you know, 10 or 12 beef. So trying to work through all that gets more difficult when you've got all those herd, you know, everything all together.
Well, and initially we had tried running them together because we were having pretty heavy predator pressure on our lambs. We lost like half of our lamb crop one year. And so we thought maybe putting them with the cattle, in addition to getting more pressure, like even pressure on the pastures that we had read that they had heard people talk about, giving some amount of predator control, or, you know, like a buffer, especially if there were calves in there. Those,
Right.
you know, those cows aren't going to play nice with a coyote.
And that really didn't happen.
And that didn't pan out. So dogs are the answer for that.
Okay.
So those even those Corriente cows with their fancy horns and all that, they really didn't care about protecting the sheep. I think they were glad to have the sheep
Eaten.
take their attention away.
Yeah.
There's one of mine that just found a new job because she couldn't protect her calf from coyotes, even though she's got literally 2 feet off each side of her head.
Right. Yeah.
And the cows did a fine job with the coyotes, I guess, because I've never lost a calf to a coyote, but lambs were a whole different.
It was almost like they were pushing the lambs in front of that. Like, hey, there's this lamb over here. Do you want it?
Yeah, look at that lamb over there. Don't look
Yeah.
at my little
Yeah.
scrawny
Oh
calf.
my God,
look
look
at
at
that
all these
lamb.
little babies over here that want to be eaten.
I could see that. I could see the cows kind of conspiring to, you know, push the lambs off in the direction of the coyotes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those shady Corrientes. You never know what they're going to do.
I've got a couple of them that keep looking at me like they're just waiting for an opportunity to stab me in the soft parts. You don't have any like that, do you?
Actually, no, really, we don't.
They taste the best, so we don't have them for very long.
We've thinned through them. So back to that whole predator deal, though, those dogs have been just amazing for us. When we went through that winter where we lost all those lambs, I got on a waiting list with a guy out in West Texas that raises some really good guardian dogs. And I had to wait like 3 months for these 2 pups. They were like basically 10-month-old pups that came trained, ready to go. And the day I dumped them out, that was it.
They instantly paid for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't lose. The losses stopped then. And I won't say we haven't lost any lambs since then, but it's been few and far between. And it's been in situations where they're in, you know, a bigger pasture and they wind up spread out.
So what breed of dog?
So it's a lot of people call them like a Texas cross or whatever, because it's Pyrenees, Akbash, and what's the other one? Anatolian. And this guy's been doing this for years, and so he's kind of got his own special, you know, he's bred up his dogs basically with that basis.
Okay. So how do they live out in the pasture?
Just like a sheep or a cow.
You don't put a dog house out for them?
We do have we have a little feeder set up that I built. It's just a little trailer with cattle panel around the sides and a roof on it. And it has a one of those self feeders in it that holds, 50 or 70 pounds or whatever of dog food. So that's on a little trailer that I can pull behind my Ranger. And when we rotate pastures, I'll hook onto that. And the sheep have learned that that's how they know we're moving pastures, right? So especially when I'll hook onto that and they hear it clanking, moving, they'll come fall in behind and just go on to the next pasture. But that thing basically has cattle panel all around it, and then at one end of it, there's a 1 foot wide gap at the bottom where those sheep or the dogs can get in it, but the sheep can't.
And that mobile dog house,
Yeah.
they have separate water from the sheep, or they just have to water wherever the
No.
sheep get water?
Yeah, they'll water where the sheep do.
They don't ever leave those sheep. They think that they are sheep. When Jeremiah took some ewes in the trailer with him to go get those dogs, and he had them like in the front compartment with the gate closed, and those dogs almost killed themselves trying to get in with the sheep. Like that's all they've ever known.
The guy that raises these does a very good job of bonding them to the sheep. So he had told me this when we bought them, that if you take these dogs anywhere, if you take them to the vet, if you whatever, take sheep with you, because they will like freak out. They get real bad separation anxiety, I guess. So, and I followed that rule and they're fine. And that's honestly, they're not the dog that's going to come up and let you pet them and be real nice. And they're not mean. They're not going to bite you, but they're not going to be your best buddy that's in your lap either. So to basically, even to catch them, I had one get into a porcupine one day and got a face full of porcupine quills and needed to take him to the vet because it was a lot.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to try and pull them all out. And so basically we put some sheep in the trailer, threw a little dog food. Well, it was actually some ground beef. I'll use that as a treat once in a while. If we have any broken packages or something like that, I'll use that and go out there with that, and got them up in the trailer. And that's how they get vet treatment. That's how they get their shots. That's how they, got taken to the vet to get those porcupine quills out.
And that's kind of wild, but I guess that's what you really want in a dog. I mean, if you're going to have a dog, if you're going to hire a dog, because honestly, that's what you're doing. You're hiring a dog to go do that job to keep those sheep safe. Some people might think, if you got to take them to the vet, what do you mean you got to load up and take three sheep with you?
Yeah.
Well, that's that dog's anchor in reality. Like it might not even know it isn't a sheep.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. There was one night, there was a ewe that had been having trouble having a lamb. And so we went out, and it was pitch black, maybe like 11 o'clock at night. We went out to go check on her. One of those dogs met us at the road, not a lamb, not a sheep in sight, like nobody else in sight. It met us at the road. We drove over to where we saw the eyeballs glowing in the headlights. And it was every other lamb and sheep out there huddled up in one big circle, and then that other dog's head sticking up out of the middle of it. Like one stayed, and they sent the other one out as a scout to see what was coming. It's amazing.
And you really usually won't find those dogs more than 100 yards from a sheep. So, you hear a lot of stories and you read about people, Facebook or whatever, and they talk about their dogs, their guard dogs roaming and all that stuff. And that's just not the nature of these animals.
We've never found them anywhere else.
Yeah, the guy that raised these does such a good job with these that, they just don't run off. They stay right there with those sheep to do their job.
They're our number one employees, even better than us.
Well, it's awful hard to beat dung beetles on my operation, but it sounds like a dog like that really could get Employee of the Month at least once or twice.
I think if you're doing sheep or goat operation, it's mandatory. I mean, we wouldn't, after that, going through that first winter without them, I wouldn't do it again.
We drug our feet for a long time, and we got dogs that we tried to train, but I'm not very good at ignoring an 8-week-old Pyrenees puppy that looks like that. I'm trying to put it in our bed, you know. So we've had several front yard Pyrenees that bonded to me and didn't work out. So when we, you know, these dogs are not cheap, and so we drug our feet for a while, but
Yeah, they don't eat any food at all, do they?
Right. But the day we got him here, it was like, man, it's stupid that we waited this long to do it.
Yeah.
Freaking 140-pound horse is what they are almost.
Yeah.
We have one that's part Porch Pyrenees, part chicken guardian. I hope we haven't lost any in a while. And the other day, actually, we were sitting on the front porch, middle of the afternoon, and we've got 3 mini Aussies, an old golden retriever, and our Pyrenees porch, or not our porch Pyrenees. And all of a sudden, like, the dogs freak out. Like, okay, there's something in the yard. They take off and they go out south toward the field. I'm not thinking anything of it. The little ones all come back, and then Lily, our Pyrenees, comes back with a rabbit.
Oh.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she whether she went out and just found one in the field or whether she got one that was trying to eat our garden.
Yeah.
Not real important, but you know, she can get one. That's I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So so anything else, you guys? Well, we haven't even talked about where you're at. We've talked about what's the name of your operation?
The name of our operation is Pure Pastures. Our
Pure-
website is purepasturestx.com.
Okay. You guys active on social media?
We are. One of us, half of us are.
Take a guess which one.
One of us is
Not
very
you.
active. But one of us is active behind the camera, and one of us is active in front of the camera. So that's his part on social media.
Okay.
And they're both at Pure Pastures TX as well, Facebook and Instagram. And yeah.
We forget anything today?
I don't think so.
Pretty much covered it.
This is your show. Did you forget anything today?
I don't think I forgot anything.
Okay.
At least I hope I did. And if I did, somebody will probably write in and remind me. I don't know.
We can do a part 2 if you get a lot of questions.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's always part 2s to do. I'll be honest, a lot of times, you know, it's like get in here and kind of get to struggling, like, okay, how do we keep the conversation going? Or is this kind of a good place to go? And then you get done and I go back and I listen and edit. And I'm like, oh man, we should have done this. We should have done this. I should have done this. I should have done this. And I always end up with notes and notes and notes and notes.
Yeah.
Next time I don't even want to talk about how many legal pads I've gone through in the last 18 months, 70 some odd episodes. So,
Well, that's kind of how my ranching endeavors go too, is, oh, we did this. We should have done this. We should have done this. You figure out all the stuff you did wrong and try to go from there. And that's really, that's the biggest learning tool, really, is doing it wrong. You got to do it wrong before you can do it right.
that's right. That's right. One of these days, I hope I'll do it wrong enough that I'll actually figure out the right way to do some of it.
Yeah, we're still trying to get like to that side of the hill. We're still very much on the doing it wrong side of the hill, but surely we'll get there.
I'm sure a lot of us feel that way, but we got to remember that there's folks that are still climbing the hill that are looking up to us.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So no matter where you are where you are. And it's a journey. And I guess the fun is getting there, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, guys, we'll let you go and go ahead and enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate you joining me.
Yes.
Yep, thank you, Brian.
All right, gang, enjoy the rest of your week.